that. I have just posted another newsletter onto sessionhair.com. If you haven't already followed me on Instagram, it's adamgarland__. And if you are new to this channel, my name is Adam Garland, and I am building an archive as I take you on my journey from working as a session hairstylist for approximately 30 years, salon, fashion, celebrity, into my process of mentoring and image making and research and building an archive. And instead of claiming to be some master and maestro, what I want to do is take you on a journey with me. So sessionhair.com is the website. You just sign up, there are no fees. And if you do that, you will be receiving our newsletters, which go out once, twice, 3 times a week, depending on what we're up to. What we have completed today is a topic which I don't think is just for photographers. And I used to think that this was just for photographers. We're talking about highlights in an image. And no, I'm not talking about bleach, high lift tint. I'm not talking about hair. I'm talking about what I would have thought was just the brighter areas of an image. Now, before we get started, I'm not a photographer. I'm not trying to be a photographer, although I do take pictures. And part of what I'm sharing is how I'm learning as a creative to construct an image to hopefully inspire you to not need to wait for permission for the industry to go, oh yeah, you're good enough to come and do an editorial with us. The fact that you could actually pick up a light, a camera, or a phone and start documenting your own work, whether you're a makeup artist, a hairstylist. And as I said, I'm not claiming to be a photographer. I have done some courses. I've done a lot of work and practice myself. And I thought, as I've talked about this so much recently about having autonomy and being able to take control of your own career, why not bring you on that journey with me? Just going to check that we have sound. So, there is a lot to learn when it comes to photography and how to do all of it. There is f-stop, ISO, shutter speed, DSLR, HDR, all the editing programs. But what I'm going to talk tonight about is highlights in image making. I'm going to be referring to my newsletter that I put out. I worked on this newsletter using one of my images and an image by Luigi and Iango, who Luigi is really inspiring to me because Luigi is a photographer, a hairstylist turned photographer, and not a little hairstylist by any means, a phenomenal hairstylist. So I've been familiar with his work now for, I don't know, over a decade. He has a very beautiful style, but he's always interested me because of this connection with hair and now into photography. So highlights. What is a highlight in an image? When most people look at a photograph, they see the model, the clothes, the hair, and the pose. A photographer learns to see something else. So we've all heard about the photographer learning light is how to master photography, and you go, yeah, the light needs to be coming from this direction in order to do that. Well, yes, it does, but that doesn't mean that's the end of light. And then I'd hear people talking about bending light and manipulating light, and I'm not really sure what all that means, but I'm learning as I go, and I just thought today I would crack on with highlights. I like a black and white image. There's lots of tonal changes in a black and white image. So a photographer learns to see something beyond just the face, just the clothes. They see where the light becomes bright, where it fades, where it disappears, where it catches the surface of the skin and hair or clothing. These brighter areas are called highlights. So it's not just every bright bit in the image, it's just certain areas within the reflective surface, which we're going to get onto. And they may look like small details, but highlights help us understand almost everything inside the image. They tell us whether something is smooth or rough, wet or dry or hard. They help us recognize shape, texture, and material. So they are a reflection of light. It's not just like a little bright bit in the image. Once you begin noticing highlights, you stop simply looking at images, you begin to understand how they were made, how the structure, how an image is constructed. And if you're thinking, well, what the hell does this have to do with me? I want to be a makeup artist, I want to be a hairstylist, a clothes stylist. This has everything to do with developing your creative judgment and your ability to communicate and to see things on set. You don't have to become a photographer. You don't have to ever take an image, although I strongly suggest you do, but it will just help you to see differently. A highlight is not just a bright area. I'm going to echo that. Imagine someone's wearing a white cotton t-shirt. The shirt may appear bright because the white is receiving a lot of light. We all know that the white bounces light. The jacket may be much darker over. Now imagine a black leather jacket under exactly the same light, because the light will be the same, but the surface it's reflecting off of is going to be different. So you don't get a different result because you change the light onto a black top as opposed to a white top. The light will still, the light source still will remain the same. It's what that light is doing when it connects with, touches, penetrates, goes through, all of those things with regards to how the light interacts with the surface. So the jacket may be darker all over, but it could contain a bright strip of reflected light. That light is what we call a highlight. The difference matters. A bright area is simply an area with a high level of brightness. So all of the white top, all of the white sky, a white wall. A true reflective highlight is closer to a small image of light source appearing on the surface. The leather may actually be showing us a distorted reflection of the softbox, of the window, of the lamp used by the photographer. This gives us our first important lesson. A highlight is evidence. It gives us clues about the light, the surface, and the shape of an object. So it's not just those little bright bits that you see in an image. Yes, it can be that, but there's a little bit more to it. And if you start to explore and understand this, it will train your eye so that when you start to see an image, you start to look at the highlights. I mean, if I do it because I'm quite enjoying, when I shave this, when I shaved down to the skin for a few days, I think I did it yesterday. If I just move my head, I'm here. If I just move my head there, my cheekbone goes boom. That was such a minimal adjustment. And what's happening here is we're creating more shadow and we're creating more highlight, but there's also highlights going on, as you can see, on my forehead. What that's also doing is that's reading the light, it's reading the shape, it's telling you that that is a curved surface. That highlight will change depending on where you bring the face. And this is a really important lesson, not just for makeup artists, not just for photographers, but for a hairstylist too, who may be wanting to change a silhouette. All of a sudden, I go from being quite round in the face to having a much more chiseled, defined cheekbone, and we can take it really far. You see my bags, lovely. So understanding light photography direction and how light reacts with a surface is going to improve your eye and your judgment when it comes to how you build an image, how you communicate with a photographer, etc., etc. So they'll carry the color of the light. I can do another good example here. So my light is on the white light, but if I all of a sudden up the yellow, so I've obviously turned slightly different color, but you can see the highlighted area is now also gone to that very sun-kissed sort of on my forehead. And as I move around, I'm going to just reduce that because that's not my vibe. There we go. And that's much more of a light white light. One of the easiest mistakes to make is assuming that all a highlight belongs to the object. So that highlight's there now, it doesn't belong to that space. As I turn, it will move. It belongs to the light. It's how that light is engaging with the surface and on what angle that subject is positioned. A white softbox creates a white highlight like we've got here. A warm sunset creates a warm highlight like I just showed you. A blue light, I don't think I've got anything. Let's see if we put this in front of here, no. But you could get a cast off of blue. Obviously you've seen people that use gels and filters. That is going to give you a blue cast and that's going to create blue highlights. It doesn't mean that your subject has become blue, it's just giving a tonal change. The shine you see on skin, I've got quite a bit of that. The hair or glass, leather is often carrying information about the light source rather than the object beneath it. So that's a little bit tricky to understand. So if the light source was yellow light bouncing on to this, the highlights are reflecting the light source back, so it become yellow. It's not saying that this has become yellow. It's also not saying now that this is white because this has got a white. It's showing you what shape and it's showing you form, but it's not turned this physically into a yellow or a white product. So this is why highlights are useful. They tell us something about the lighting before they tell us about the subject. Is the light warm? Is it daylight? Is it natural? Is it white light? So the same light does not create the same result. Imagine placing several objects beside another. You've got this, and then you've got glass, and you've got a very different thing happening with the light when it hits these items. We'll use this. There are still highlights involved in this, but very different. The cotton will absorb and scatter much of the light. It may appear bright, but it will probably not have the sharp reflection. So we've got much more of a reflection here. We can see that there are lighter parts on here, but it's much more diffused or scattered. It's not giving that luminous, you know, if I bring that really close. You can see there when it auto corrects, there are highlights, many highlights within that rag, but they're not giving that sort of shine. So that's dependent on the surface. The glass may create bright edges, the metal may act almost like a mirror. I don't know if I've got, you know, we've got this, that becomes very shiny. And the leather may produce a broad shine. The skin may show a mixture of glow, texture, reflection. The light has stayed the same. So the light source is white, it's all stayed the same, but we're getting a different feel back. The surfaces have changed. Every surface has its own way of receiving, absorbing and reflecting light. I love this, what I learned earlier, that when light hits the skin, it goes into the skin and illuminates the skin from the inside, penetrates the skin. Now that makes complete sense when you think about going on a sunbed, and you shouldn't go on sunbeds, but when you think about all those things, the light goes through the skin. I was fascinated that I learned this today, that light goes through the skin and then it creates a luminous, glossy, and then it will depend what is on the surface of the skin as how that light either penetrates it, bounces off. I was fascinated by that. It almost inspired me to want to do makeup for some reason. I don't know why I found that so mind-blowing. But every surface has its own way of receiving, absorbing the light. This is one of the reasons materials remain recognizable in a black and white photograph. We don't need color to recognize leather because we're getting the reflection from the light source is showing the texture. We recognize it through its highlights. So those lighter parts, those darker parts, then the midtones are creating the structure, the form. The form is always there. The light is showing us that. The reflection of the light is what we see. So you're not really photographing a face. We usually speak about photographing the face as a whole, but if we think about it, a face is made up of a forehead, cheekbones, the brows, the eyes, the nose, the eyelids, the lips, the jaw, the chin, the skin. And that's all got different shapes, different textures, and points in slightly different direction. That means each part is meeting the light completely different. It's like, oh yeah. So you say you want to just light the face. A lot of us will put the phone to a certain angle because we feel like that's where we look our best. But that's what we're choosing of us looking at our best. But if someone's looking at me from a different angle, they're getting a completely different view. Because my features don't look the same. This is very simple, but my features are not going to look the same when I look like this, or when I look like this, when I look like this. So each point's in a slightly different direction. That means each part meets the light differently. A broad forehead may create a wide, gradual highlight. So I've got quite a wide forehead. I think we get quite a strong highlight. My light source is small, so you can see how, although we're getting light, that's coming from the light over there. You see how my light source is relatively small, and we're talking about the light source it's showing you on the subject. Well, you can see here, you can just about see I'm using a square light, which is directly in front of me. So that being said, now you can start to think about how you could sculpt light with that light source. So if I move here and I come here and I come in, now I've got the light source on those key areas. So I've got a little bit on my cheekbone, there we go. Got cheekbone, we got some here, a little bit on the bridge of my nose, and we're just understanding that we can play with light, but we understand the light source. A narrow nose bridge may create a small tighter. So again, we've got a relatively small light source here. Subscribe and like. A narrow nose bridge can create a smaller. The light has not changed. The shape of the surface has changed. So where the light's hitting now, if I move just a millimeter, it's going to completely change the way the light hits my face and the image we perceive we're seeing, that our brains create. This is why moving the model's head just a few degrees can completely change a portrait. Turn the head slightly towards the light, coming towards the light, and the cheekbone may begin to glow, as we've seen already. I'm going to come here, up, in we come to the light, and there you go. You can follow that highlight. The skin hasn't changed. It's the position of the face which is enhancing what it's seeing and what it's reflecting off. Lower the chin, the forehead will change. Raise one shoulder, the body has to change. The photographer is not simply making the subject brighter, they're choosing which surfaces allow the light to reflect towards the camera, therefore sculpting or working with the light. The pose changes the highlights. A pose does more than create body language. Imagine a model wearing that leather jacket again. When the model raises one shoulder and folds, the folds and the ripples, some parts turn towards the light, some undulate away. That creates those folds which now reflect light towards the camera, producing a series of bright marks. Those marks describe the jacket's shape. You start to see structure beyond just the outside of the silhouette. Excuse me. Without them, the shoulder could just become one dark flat area. It would be a little bit like this jumper. But even here, if you look, we have see, every time I move, we lose it. But we have highlights here. We have highlights here. Otherwise, this would just look like one big black mass. So it's acting like a small bit of contouring on a map. It does not create the shape, it reveals it. So it's not making my jumper undulate. My jumper has got those ripples. What it's doing is it's revealing the surface. So hair is designed before it is lit. So now we're going to move that into hair, and we're going to move that potentially into makeup. Hair is made from thousands of small fibers, strands. Each fiber goes in its own direction and it has its own surface. So when straight hair is smooth and blow dried, everything starts to line up as immaculate as possible, and the reflections can join together and you get that glassy sheen, that glassy finish. That's like one continuous band of shine. When the hair is curly, the direction keeps changing. So we're going to get shadows and silhouettes, and we're going to get lots of different directions, which means the light is going to hit it completely differently, especially as it moves. So instead of one smooth band, light breaks into smaller arcs and glints. And then with coily hair, afro hair, the highlights may have become even more distributed, because the light catches many different points and the shape rather than forming one continuous strip. And none of these are right, none of these are wrong, no one's better than the other. They simply describe the different structures. Sectioning, smoothing, curling, wetting, adding oil, using texture spray and controlling flyaways all change the surface. Those choices determine whether the finished hair produces a smooth ribbon, a broken pattern, or a field of tiny highlights, or a combination of everything. So as I've done this research today, I thought I understood how light hit hair. I thought I understood what I was doing. Yes, I probably intrinsically knew, but since spending an hour doing a bit of research today, I'm like, oh, okay, I start to see things a little bit different. We can see where my hair is a bit sweaty and has a bit of moisture in it. It's creating a reflective surface. And then here, even though that is more prominent, so this is closer to the light, it's dull. Even though it's lighter, it's dry. My hair hasn't been cut for 2 years, and this area is really dry. It's just really fascinated me and got me interested in looking deeper into an image than I've ever looked before. So the decision of smooth hair, shine, preserve texture, or create movement is already a lighting decision made long before the lights are switched on. And the photographer will reveal that surface. So if you become aware of light and start to have a thinking of the light, which is why it's important to know who you're shooting with and how they're going to light, the hairstyle helps build it. So it's like taking it further than just going, oh, this is how this will be lit. So using a reference and thinking, well, that's how that will lit. And it's, I don't know, Mizell inspired, or Hugo Comte, or Avedon, or whatever. And thinking that's how that's going to be lit. But it's understanding what the light is doing when it's going to hit that surface because of the light source. It's understanding beyond what I realized I understood when it comes to asking the photographer at the beginning of the shoot, what is the light? They control how we look. Our eyes are naturally attracted to the brighter areas. So in a beauty portrait, your eye might travel through the image in the order of forehead, eyes, cheekbone, nose, lips, shoulder. The path is rarely accidental. That's when the photographer is sculpting the light, guiding you through the image and taking you on a visual journey of the face. A photographer may create a dominant highlight on the face while keeping the clothes and the background quieter. This helps the viewer understand what matters most. So it's going to draw you in, the eyes and the expression. And if you just slightly change the expression and move and all those little nuances, when you start to think about the light, every time it's going to change. There is so much infinite ability with light and sharing. The photographer must decide which highlights lead and which ones support. So I'll come back to, like, if I'm going to bounce this light off my cheekbone, do I want it? I don't want it down there because I know that doesn't feel correct to me. I want to bring the highlight onto my cheekbone. Then I'm not sure about it there, so I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to come up. Doesn't mean I have to stay in this one position. I can move around. I can move into the light. Can keep moving. And the light can obviously move, and then the photographer is going to move. This is part of image structure, just like composition. So the condition of the surface also changes the highlight, whether it's a shiny surface, whether it's dry. If it's dry skin, the light hits it and it seems to scatter because it's got nothing to bounce back off. So it becomes, the highlights become a lot softer and a lot less shiny. Oil obviously creates a top layer, a smooth top layer, and this produces a clearer and brighter reflection, which is why when you go in with the oil or you go in with reflector, you wouldn't place it in this being creative. You know, you can find that highlight and then you go in and enhance that highlight, enhance this area so it really starts to pop. Sweat behaves completely differently again. Small droplets create individual points of light rather than one continuous sheen. So instead of it being like an oil, which is like connected, the droplets, the individual pores are all going to bounce that light back completely differently. Matte makeup roughens or diffuses the surface, reducing the strength of the shine, as we all know. And glossy makeup or highlighter deliberately adds controlled reflection to areas such as the cheekbones, nose, lips. This means makeup does not merely add color, it changes the way the face interacts with the light. The same is true for hair products, fabric finishes, and polished surface. So we're just going to run through the last part of this newsletter. Learning to a simple experiment. You don't need a camera to see this for yourself. Pick something glossy. We're going to go back to the trusty mic pack. Now slowly move your head from side to side. Even if I keep this still and I move around it, what I'm seeing is the highlight is moving. The bright areas move while others stay in place. The moving brightness is a reflection, but so imagine I'm the camera, it's now seeing it slightly different from here as it would from here, as it would from here. The brightness remains, but the brightness that remains belongs to that object. And once you notice the difference, you'll start seeing it everywhere, which I did. I was in the toilet at Starbucks and I was thinking, I was looking at the toilet seat. The toilet seat, which was bouncing all the light up, and it was a very small spotlight and it's very directional, and the toilet seat was very glossy. So then I noticed that the same light source was not doing the same to the wall, and I thought, then I looked at the wall and the wall was grey granite and it had different mottled texture, and then I realized that the light source is hitting that it doesn't have much reflect, the same kind of reflect, so those highlights aren't going to be as prominent. So I started to almost drive myself crazy in that bathroom, looking at the door hinge, looking at the light. It was really fascinating. It was really interesting to go that little bit further than they've ever gone before. Next time a photograph catches your attention, resist the temptation to ask whether you like it. Ask something more interesting. Where are the highlights? So I want you to look for highlights. Look at the forehead, the cheekbone, the lips, the jacket, the hair, the background. Notice how your eye moves from one bright area to the other. You're going to follow those things around. We all like shiny things. Well, most of us do. Notice how your eyes move from one bright area to the other. Notice which surfaces appear smoother, rough, wet, polished, or matte. Every highlight is describing the object beneath it. Then ask yourself the question, why is the highlight there? Not by accident, because someone placed a light, someone turned a face, someone raised a shoulder, someone chose a fabric, applied a makeup. There were choices that were made. Once you begin reading highlights, photographs become less mysterious. You stop asking whether an image is beautiful. You begin asking why. That question has shaped generations of photographers, filmmakers, hairstylists, makeup artists, and image makers. It can shape the way you see the world too, because image making doesn't begin with a camera, it begins with learning to see. So I've really enjoyed this process today of looking at highlights and going on my own little journey. Not claiming to be a photographer, not yet, maybe. But come with me on this journey as I explore image making and how learning something, even at this point in your career, taking things that slightly bit further will potentially broaden, expand, and help you see images differently. If you haven't subscribed, please go and subscribe. Check out sessionhair.com. I'll be back very, very soon. Thanks to everyone.